Hello everyone. So in today's video, I'm going to be doing a review of the MOZA Slypod-E. So this particular device is going to be catered more towards videographers when it comes to content creation. So if you are a content creator, maybe you produce videos for YouTube, perhaps you have clients that you make videos for, promotional videos, weddings, or anything of that nature. If you do any of the above, then you might want to consider including something like this into your filmmaking equipment. So the whole purpose of this slider is so that the content creator can introduce smooth movement into their videos. And for those of you who do create videos, you know the importance or the impact that movement has on the overall creation. So in this video, I'm going to do a quick breakdown on the various features that this slider has. I'm going to talk about the build quality, and I'm going to mention the pros and cons of this device. So I've had the opportunity to use this Slypod for the past month, and while I do think that this item has a lot of potential to be amazing, there are some areas where I feel as though MOZA can improve upon when it comes to later versions of this device. So without further ado, let's get into the review of the MOZA Slypod-E. Alright, so just as a side note, I just wanted you to be aware that a lot of the B-roll videos that you're seeing inserted in this video were actually taken with the use of the Slypod-E. So this should give you a good enough example of how well the Slypod-E performs. Now with that being said, before we get into more details on the Slypod-E, let's just go over what exactly the Slypod-E comes with. So to start off, as you can see here, there is a very nice carrying case. So this is going to be very useful when you have to port around your Slypod, maybe if you're doing videos for a client. And on the inside of the carrying case, you will see that everything is padded, okay? And because of this, you shouldn't have to worry about your Slypod getting damaged in any kind of way. So great carrying case, nice design, very sleek looking. So when it comes with the accessories here, what it comes with and what it doesn't come with. The reason why I say what it doesn't come with is because the Slypod-E is the most inexpensive Slypod out of the lineup of Slypods. So you have the Slypod-E, and then the mid-tier, which is the Slypod, and then the Slypod Pro. Now the thing with this Slypod-E, the reason why it is the most inexpensive is not because the quality isn't there, but rather it is because it doesn't come with this tilt pan head, which is proprietary to MOZA. So the whole thing with this is that if you can afford it, I would recommend it, even though it is a little bit on the pricier side. What I like about this is because A, it's very, very sturdy, and when it comes to mounting this onto the top of your Slypod, it's very simple, it's very straightforward, and also when you put your camera on this, it's very sturdy. So I have a very heavy setup here. I'm using a DSLR camera with a heavy lens, and when I mount that lens onto this tilt pan head, it stays into place and there's no movement. And another thing that I like about this tilt pan head is that when it comes to maneuvering it, it's very easy. So you have your tilt just like that, you just push the button and then it moves into position, it locks in, and then you tighten it. And there's also a very smooth pan head, so you can see it rotating, okay, just like that. So very smooth, and in my opinion, it's worth it. So you're probably wondering, okay, what if you don't have the budget for this proprietary tilt pan head? Well, there is another option, because within this Slypod bundle, there is an adapter that you can place onto the top of the Slypod here. All right, so it's very easy. You simply take the head, slide it in, locks into place, and then you screw it on. And then with this adapter that is on top, it'll give you the ability to screw on your own ball head on top here so that you can mount your camera. So with that being said, I'm going to leave some links down below for some more inexpensive ball heads that you can place on your Slypod-E. Okay, so going into the box a little further here, you'll see that there is a few more accessories. You'll see that there is a mini tripod here, and this is going to be used when it comes to positioning your Slypod into place. So you would simply take this mini tripod, screw it onto the base, and in doing so, it is going to allow you, to have like an additional grip here to hold on to it. And then also is going to give you the ability to mount your Slypod vertically so that you can capture those smooth up and down movements. And using this, with my experience, it's pretty sturdy. As long as you're not using it in windy conditions, it's going to do a great job of keeping it in place. And in doing so, I find that there was almost no sort of movement or vibration in the footage that I took in that position. So likewise, because there is an adapter here as well, you can also mount this Slypod horizontally, provided that you have a solid tripod. So I have a pretty sturdy tripod that I mount this on horizontally, and in doing so, it gives me the ability to get those smooth side movements, just like that, okay? Which is basically why it's called a slider, okay? So these are basically the accessories that pertain to this Slypod. Now, when it comes to the actual features of this Slypod, there's actually quite a few. So let's start off with the controls at the base of the Slypod itself. So as noted before, you're going to notice that there is a plus and minus button that is on the side here. Naturally, the plus is going to extend the slider, and then contrarily, the minus is going to contract it, just like so. And also, if you can also adjust the speed at which the slider moves simply by clicking it in increments. So the more that I click it, it's the faster that it's going to go. So right now it's moving very slowly, and it's going to go faster. And the more I click it, it's going to go even faster. Okay? And then inversely, with the minus, the more I click it, it's the faster that it's going to go. So it really gives you options in terms of capturing that extra smooth footage. Then moving on, you'll see that there is a power button that is here. So in order to shut it off, you would simply hold on that circular button until the ring goes off. And then you will hold on it again for it to turn on. Okay, and even the color of this ring can be changed through the use of the application, which I'm going to talk about in just a bit. So I think you can change the color from green, blue, indigo, and I think white as well. I think there's 5 different colors in total that you can change this through. So very nice that they give you at least the ability to customize the way how your Slypod looks. And with this button as well, say you are moving it, okay, it's in motion and you want to stop it, you simply double tap the circle button and then it will stop. And let's just say it's going again, you triple tap it and then it's just going to retract without you having to hold on the minus button. Okay, so these are the external controls. And then here you'll see that there is an opening for you to actually charge your Slypod, as this is ran by a rechargeable battery. So with my experience, I was able to get a good 2 hours of use from this. And even after the 2 hours was over, I still had battery left. And the good thing about this is that because it's rechargeable as well, it's going to be ultra portable. And you can use this on, let's just say, a shoot. If you have to go record for a client, you don't have to sort of worry about having a power outlet. But let's just say, for example, your battery dies. Well, that's not an issue either, because this is going to give you the option of also using it while it is being charged. So as long as it's plugged in, you'll still have the ability to use this slider. So this is another plus for the design of this Slypod, feature-wise. Okay, so as mentioned before, there is an option to use an application with this slider. So you can download the application. It's available on Android as well as for Apple or iOS devices. And with this application, it gives you a little bit more control over your Slypod. So you can do things such as time lapse. Now, I know that a lot of cameras already have that feature. However, if you purchase an additional shutter cable, you can connect this Slypod to your camera, and you can synchronize the movement of the slider with your camera. So what do I mean by this? You can make it so by the time the slider completes its full extension, that the time lapse is going to be terminated on the camera as well, so that they're synchronized. So this is a very nice feature that MOZA has included with this slider. In addition to that, you can also do different programs as well. So let's just say you want your Slypod to move at a certain speed. You can adjust that within the app, and you can even do micro adjustments, like really fine tune how fast you want it to go. In addition to that, if you want to set up, let's say, a program, so you want it to go up and down in cycles continuously, I think it can do up to 4 or 5 cycles, then you can program that within the application as well. So that is also a very nice feature. So I think what I might do in a later video is maybe do a tutorial on how to use the application with this slider. Now, I know that MOZA also has other equipment such as gimbals, and I think in the future there's going to be a way to use both the slider with a gimbal within one app. So it's going to give you a little bit more creativity when it comes to having movement in your videos. So that is the use of the application. So as mentioned before, there are pros and cons to using this Slypod. So I think the way how I'm going to demonstrate the pros for this Slypod, I'm going to compare it to the previous tool that I was using to incorporate movement into my videos. And that is this manual slider. Okay. This one here is from Newer. It's 80 centimeters in length, so it's longer than the Slypod-E. However, in using it, I was able to make a lot of great content, but there are sort of issues that were addressed with the Slypod-E. So issues that I had with the manual slider were addressed with the Slypod-E. And to give you a quick example is when it comes to consistency. So with this slider, I would mount my camera onto the plate that's here, and in doing so, it would give me relatively smooth movement to my footage. However, because we're human and we're not perfect, the consistency at which the slider is moving isn't going to be continuous. So we might be moving at a certain speed, but we might be slowing down, or we might introduce some micro vibrations into the footage. So it would take me multiple shots in order for me to get the perfect sort of clip that I would use in my videos. So it wasn't as efficient. Whereas with the Slypod-E, it's a motorized, so every single shot is consistent. So it's going to maintain the same speed from the beginning of the slide going all the way to the end if you want it to. So this is where the MOZA Slypod-E would shine over the manual slider. Now, another thing that I really didn't like about this slider, even though it's long, which is a plus, the whole thing is that if I was doing like a push in or a pull out motion, at a certain point, the rails would actually show up in my footage. So then at a certain point of the movement, I wouldn't be able to use it because the rail would show up. Whereas with the Slypod-E, you don't have that problem because the camera is always mounted on the front of it. So as the slider is moving, you're not going to see the Slypod in the shot. So that was one of the sort of pet peeves that I had with the manual slider. In addition to that, it also takes up a lot of space. So as I said before, this is 80 centimeters. And because it's longer, I had to mount a tripod on one end and then on the other end as well, just to prevent it from tipping over because it's longer. Whereas with the Slypod-E, as long as I mount it onto a sturdy tripod, I just have to use one. So it's a lot more compact. And I think that MOZA sort of factored this into their design when they only made it so it had a reach of 11 inches. Which brings me to the cons of the Slypod Pro. So as you can see, the pros of having the Slypod-E really outweighed the pros of the manual slider here. But when it comes to the cons of the Slypod-E, rather than me telling you, I'm just going to let you listen if you haven't noticed. As you can tell, it's pretty noisy, okay? So for me personally, this doesn't create any issues because I normally don't use the audio footage for my B-roll when I'm making content for my channel. So that's not a problem. However, if you're using the Slypod while someone else is speaking and you want to record that audio for your footage, then you might capture the sound from the motor that comes from this Slypod. And I think it would be very difficult or even impossible to sort of edit out that sound from your footage. So if you're using it in a situation where someone else needs to speak over the Slypod, then you might have a bit of issues. But if you're not using the audio from your B-roll footage, like in my case, then it works out to be perfect. Now, another con, if I can call it that, for the Slypod is that the extension is only 11 inches. Now, initially I was a little bit concerned that the 11 inches wouldn't have been long enough for my use, but after using it for a month, I find that the length is actually perfect, and I'm able to get more than enough footage when it comes to getting like a sliding shot for a product that I'm trying to review. So if you do want something that is longer, then you are going to have to update to the Slypod Pro, which is scheduled to be released very shortly. Now, what I do like about this is that because it is a little shorter, I don't have the need to have two tripods. So I don't have to mount a tripod on one end and then another tripod on the other. Because it's relatively short, I just have a solid tripod mounted on the middle, and then I'm good to go. So the setup is very efficient and it doesn't take as much space. All right, so that would be the only two cons that I would address with the Slypod-E. However, I believe that even the sound issue has been rectified with the Slypod Pro. So you are spending a little bit more money, but I think if you need the added length and a slider that is slightly quieter than the Slypod-E, then the Slypod Pro might be the better option for you. So with that being said, is this something that I would recommend for the average content creator? After using it for a month, I can personally say that it has sped up my setup time, and it has also allowed me to sort of capture better quality footage without having to take multiple tries. And I think that updating to something like this will definitely improve the overall quality of your video and allow you to work in a more efficient manner. So for me personally, this works out to be very good for my own setup. If you are doing B-roll with this and you're not going to use the audio footage from it, then it's perfect. But if you are going to be using the audio footage from your recording, then this is not something that I would recommend due to the noise that the motor creates. So maybe stepping up to the Slypod Pro would be a better alternative. So with that being said, I want to say thank you for watching this video. And if you like this content, please don't hesitate to hit the like button, as it does help the channel to grow. And if you like the channel overall, please consider subscribing, as this does help the channel to also grow and to become a little bit more discovered by other potential viewers. So I want to say thank you for watching. And once again, if you have any comments, any questions, please drop them down below in the comment section, as I do enjoy hearing from you, the viewer. So thank you once again for watching, and I hope to see you at the next video. Take care for now.